think our opportunities are to help students as they're getting older?
Well, I think this particular flight attendant that became a mechanic in the military hadn't much background, but she aced the mechanical aptitude test. So the military just said, "You're fixing planes." That shows me that the military is really hard up for people to fix things, because the mechanical devices, that's the visual thinker.
Yeah. What do you think lends itself well to best with working with animals? How do you?
Well, the visual thinker is going to be good with the animals,
Yeah.
because it was obvious to me to look at what the animal's seeing.
Oh, sure.
That was totally obvious to me. I mean, look at all the shadows we've got right here. If those were going across the cattle chute, the animals would stop. Then when a cloud goes over the sun, those shadows are gone. So that explains why the cattle are flowing nice and smooth, and now all of a sudden they stopped flowing when the sun came back out. I was noticing those things. Other people were not noticing them. And at the time that I worked on that, I didn't know other people thought differently. I had no idea.
You've now written this whole book for teenagers about how minds work differently.
That's right. The visual thinking book. And I found research that shows very clearly object visualizers like me, that's going to be art and animals and mechanical, also photography.
Oh,
And then the math, music, the chemists, the physicists are different kinds of thinking. And the mistake that's made when they do like verbal versus visual is mixing those two together. That's a mistake. They are different kinds of thinking. And there's research that shows that.
and so as you're trying to help the rest of us catch up with sort of understanding these different kinds of minds, it seemed like part of your book was trying to encourage students really that your strengths are really wired in how your mind is wired.
Well, I think when you get, a lot of people are more middle of the road on the different kinds of thinking. But you get someone who's a little bit on the autism spectrum, then you might get an extreme object visualizer or an extreme mathematician. And much less sort of mixtures. And we have a big problem on people fixing things. I'm taking little informal surveys on elevator issues as I travel all around the country. The inspection certificates are expired. Now the hotels are taking them down. Elevators with doors that don't work right. Escalators that are broken. Every airport I go to. Not just here. Well, where are the visual thinkers that should be fixing these things?
Yeah, because we haven't given them an opportunity to learn that about themselves.
Well, the other problem is algebra requirements screen them out. They just screen them out.
Tell us a little more, because that happened to you, right?
I have never passed an algebra class, so I majored in psychology, and I had to do statistics. Those a little bit more to visualize, had tutor, and more tutor. And when I failed my first quizzes, I asked for help. And thank goodness in the 60s, matrices, probability, and statistics was the main math that was taught. I had to be tutored, but that was easier. I was better able to visualize that.
The statistics?
Yeah.
With a bell curve or something?
Yes, and we studied mean, the mode, that you see, and you were relating the statistical tests back to real data.
Yep.
That was easier. And I had to drop a physics class. I had to drop a biomedical engineering class. But let me tell you, biomed needs us to prevent some very bad mistakes, like the metal on metal artificial hip disaster that put gunk out into people's bodies.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have made that mistake. And I wouldn't have made the mistake they made at Fukushima, the lack of waterproof doors to protect the electric emergency cooling pump. I can't design a nuclear reactor, but they need me for the safety systems.
How interesting.
Simple waterproof doors would have saved that. Wouldn't have happened.
And that idea of trying to capture different types of minds in our community, in our economy, in our systems, I mean, it seems like such an obvious
The
thing.
military seems to be doing it. And you do well on the mechanical test, you're fixing equipment.
They've found that out.
They have found that out.
I wonder if teachers read your book.
Well,
If-
this is why I did the book, because I'm very concerned, especially me, the object visualizer is just getting screened out. And we're playing video games in the basement on a disability, when we ought to be fixing things like elevators. We ought to be inventing mechanical equipment. Because you want a pork plant or you want a turkey plant, you're going to buy all the mechanical equipment from Holland. Because in ninth grade, in Europe, you can go tech university. We have a tendency to look at the visual thinking as a lesser form of thinking. It's not. I spent 25 years in heavy construction.
Yeah.
And I worked with shop people that were great visual thinkers, and they were just inventing all kinds of stuff. Patenting it, useful patents, not stupid patents, really useful patents.
One of the things we're trying to do is elevate the technical training here in Western Colorado. And so
that's good.
It seems like what you're describing is so important to helping teachers and parents and others understand these different types of thinking.
Well, don't force the vet tech major to complete a full course in algebra. Please don't. Because you're going to screen out some of your best vet techs. Now, the algebra they have to do for drug dosing, that very specific stuff, they have to learn that. But that's very specific and can be memorized.
That's good advice.
Just memorize it.
I'll talk to Dr. Maresco later
Because
about
I'm
that.
concerned that, like things like elevator certificates being expired, that's gotten really bad just in the last few years.
Yeah, because nobody fixes them.
Nobody fixes them. And they have the slow doors, and there's one elevator at the Denver airport. I'd use the sound it makes for sound effects for a 1950 submarine movie. And I hope I don't get stuck in it. It's out in the parking garage.
So
And-
one of the things you just described that we could do to help kiddos is giving them an opportunity sooner at younger ages to work with their hands.
Well, yes, and you see, in my generation, in elementary school, we did shop. We were making things out of clay in first grade. We were doing all kinds of hands-on things. And they're putting it back in the tech schools. But the problem is, we need to be introducing a lot of this stuff with working with hands younger kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I was good at art, and I was encouraged to do lots of different kinds of art, not just draw the same horse head over and over again, but to do lots of different kinds of art. That's what I was encouraged to do.
And quickly found that you were good at it.
Well, Mother really encouraged the art. I was using tools in second grade. Hammer, plier, and screwdriver. I can remember my little kid's hand wasn't strong enough to take pliers and just cut a coat hanger. So I'd make a dent in it, and then I'd bend it. I can remember doing that.
Well, it seems like as parents, we have something to learn from that too, giving our kids opportunities at younger ages to do things that might feel a
Well,
little...
we got to control the screen time. I don't suggest banning it,
Yeah,
but an hour on social media is plenty a day.
yeah.
I'm not saying we ban it, but we've got to replace it with other things. And the other thing kids aren't learning today is just social skills like talking to people. And Bill Gates came out with a new book, Source Code, and he discussed how, when his mother had a party, he had to be a host.
Oh,
In my neighborhood, kids when they were 7 and 8 had to be hosts and hostesses at parties and pass the snacks out. That taught social skills. Selling candy for charity taught you to go up and talk to people. Kids aren't doing enough of that sort of thing. She had him in scouting, getting out doing things.
are there things that we can be doing as a community to keep sort of elevating this conversation around identifying and encouraging different types of minds?
Well, you have to have activities for them to do. I mean, I remember the teenage boys in my neighborhood were making go-karts with lawnmower engines, driving them around on the neighborhood streets. Kids aren't growing up working on cars anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm amazed at the amount of students I have in my class, and I have a scale drawing assignment. They've never used a ruler. They've never used a tape measure. They don't understand basic math, like if a chute's 30 inches wide, on your scale ruler, that's 2.5 spaces for 2'6". I had a student last semester, I had to explain that 2'6" and 30 inches are the same thing. All right, that kind of math I was doing in 4th grade. No problem.
Yeah. Do you find that you can identify students really quickly now?
Well, I only can identify them. I can look at the drawings, and there's some students that just get it, and I can tell they're looking at the drawings. I have to look at the drawings.
And when you do, you can see
I
it
can
pretty
tell,
quick.
yeah. There's also a certain kind of student that has a visual processing problem. These are the students where LED lights that flicker will bother them.
Oh,
And when they do a drawing, and they'll do like weird scribbles, and I'll pull them aside and go, when you read, do you ever see the print jiggle on the page? Do certain lights flicker and bother you? They'll say yes. And then what sometimes works for that is just printing the homework on different colored paper, or experimenting with fonts and colored backgrounds on computers. But these are drawings that are all scribbly.
interesting.
And then I got the student, oh, they just turn out a beautiful drawing. And knowledge of cattle has nothing to do with it.
Yeah,
They just understand the rules, the book, and they just do it.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
It seems like you've had the benefit of really thinking deeply about how different minds work, and you've understood your own mind.
Well, I didn't realize until I was in my late 30s that other people didn't think in pictures. The best way to describe my memory is like little phone pictures. So the more places I go out and I see and things that interest me, I take a mental picture.
Okay.
That goes into my memory like little phone pictures.
Huh.
And then I can think it in a kind of an associative sort of way.
Yeah.
Well, this mechanism on this machine looks like a game they had at the Cracker Barrel,
How interesting.
something like that.
And that's how your mind associates.
And then I see a picture of the game from the Cracker Barrel.
That's so interesting. But the words don't do that for you.
Words to describe the pictures. And I don't remember every hotel room because they don't interest me. I have to sort of, in my mind, take a picture
Because it's interesting.
because it interested me. If a hotel's really awful or really weird, that will get remembered. There's
Well-
certain hotel brands I don't like to stay at.
Well, I'll have to ask you later
Yeah,
if you like our hotel room.
it was just fine. As Holiday Inn used to say years ago, no surprises. The surprises in a hotel room are usually bad.
Well, as you've gone out and really revolutionized in some ways animal sciences, what do you think is the next frontier in this way?
Well, I'm very concerned about some of the animals we're breeding now. We're breeding a lot of heart failure in cattle, foot abnormalities, like if you have a crossed toe like this, that's a genetic abnormality. Please don't breed that. That animal needs to be beefed. And these are problems that creep up slowly. I mean, heart failure in cattle used to just be a high altitude issue. We're getting it in the 2,000 foot elevations in Texas now. We're breeding for heavier at a younger age. Is one of the traits connected with it. Big ribeyes. Just breeding for production. Breeding a pug to have a flatter and flatter face, to where you have to do surgery on it to make it breathe. Breeding a naked cat that weird legs that just break. Horses with extreme dish faces, because people think that's pretty. No, I'm very concerned both in pet animals and in livestock animals, breeding too extreme. And then you get problems. And the problem with these problems is they creep up very slowly.
Yeah.
I call that bad becoming normal. Like the amount of lameness we've got right now in feedlot cattle is terrible in some groups of feedlot cattle. And some of it's conformation.
And fixable sounds to me like.
Well, you get animal that's got a crossed toe, the young animal, or the slot in the hoof is shaped like this.
Yeah.
That's an abnormality.
Yeah.
Don't breed that animal. Just beef it. You see, I just see it, and I was worried about the heart failure stuff 10 years ago. People thought it was kind of crazy. Now it's come to a head. Now it's well recognized. You got some groups of cattle, 20%, 30% swollen hearts when they're opened up at the packing plant. That's horrible.
And
And
fixable.
some of the lameness, and some of it's conformational. You just breed for production, you tend to breed for awful feed. I kind of look at genetic selection sort of like a national budget. If I put everything into the economy, meat, milk, or eggs. I shortchanged my infrastructure. The skeleton, the heart, the repro. What am I doing to my military over here, the immune function? Because it requires energy to run the immune function too. Nothing's free. There's always trade-offs.
There's always trade-offs.
Always trade-offs. Nothing's free. Everything takes energy.
That's seems like such an obvious statement, but it's really not, right?
Well, I have to visualize on you see, and then infrastructure. Okay, for a country, it'll be like electric power plant, for example,
Yeah.
or hydroelectric power or something like that. But then for an animal, the quality of the skeleton. It takes energy to build a quality skeleton.
Yep. And you see that differently maybe than some people do.
Well, you see, visual thinking is a different way of problem solving. I mean, Fukushima had brilliant mathematicians that made that reactor absolutely earthquake proof. They shook and it shook and it shook. It was just fine. 20 minutes later, the tsunami drowned the electric pump. A very important electric pump. I can't design a nuclear reactor, but all I know about that pump, if it doesn't run, I'm in so much trouble it's not funny. And it's not going to run underwater with an electric motor.
Yep. It just, the visual thinking allows you to see
I
problems.
see it. They built a 10-meter seawall. I looked up the historical information. It was easy to find. 10-meter seawall is going to get breached. Look up the historical data.
And once it does.
And, well, the other problem you got a seawall there. So now the water comes onto the site. Now you're really in trouble. Instead of having the water just sweep through the site, now you got 20 foot of water piled back against the seawall, holding the water on the site.
Holding it in.
Yeah, and that then guaranteed to flood the basement if you do that.
And the way you're able to see that, you just see it
Oh,
differently.
there's no way I would have made that mistake. I was just flabbergasted when I found out that's why Fukushima burned up. That simple watertight doors would have saved it. Simple things. You buy them shipbuilding companies.
Yeah, right?
Old-fashioned technology. And it would not have happened. So I have a whole section in my book, Visual Thinking, on disasters.
It seems like
That's one of them.
it seems like such an encouragement to kids to understand that their mind maybe feels out of the ordinary to them, but it actually is a real strength.
Well, it's a strength, and we're not doing well by our math kids. I'm hearing too many horror stories of fourth grader, big behavior problem, forced to do baby math over and over and over again, when that kid needs to be given an old-fashioned algebra book. Not this newfangled stuff. Old-fashioned algebra book. For that kid, it's a door to opportunity. That book's a doorstop for me. Yeah, and I subscribe to both science and nature, and I look through the author lists on papers on quantum mechanics, quantum computing. I don't understand these papers, but I know how to read the author list. They're from China. Okay, we want to stay ahead of China. We're not doing a very good job with the math kids either. Our school system sort of more go the middle of the road kid. No, all you have to do with that math kid in fourth grade, I'm not suggesting putting him in high school. Just let him do high school math in the fourth grade classroom.
Give them a different pathway.
Yeah. It's not being done. I've talked to quite a few teachers about that. And some of these kids, hacking into the school's computer system was one of the least bad things they did. Some other bad stuff they did when they got bored is really bad stuff I'd rather not talk about. Because they're not getting challenged in math. And then you got to show them what they can do with the math. I think science and nature needs to be in a lot of school libraries.
Allow us to think about it differently.
No, that kid, one thing I noticed on these physics articles, and a lot of these articles where I don't understand the math, beautiful geometric patterns of materials, of pores on cells. I just like to turn the math kids loose on those articles.
Let them figure it out.
Well, that's right. Let them figure it out. We had DeepSeek that kind of turned the tech industry upside down. Well, he was a total math nerd. Studied calculus for play in 7th grade. And found out that he didn't need our fancy chips. And the thing that's interesting is our most high-end chip that we're export protecting right now, it was originally made for video games. That's what it was originally made for.
That seems right.
Yeah, and well, one of the things he did was to catalog the data center like a library. So if you look up cooking, you don't search the whole data center.
Yeah, you're short-circuiting it to
Well,
that
you're-
area.
You're just looking to where the information is on cooking, not the entire data center.
Smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
So we're out here today, and you're giving all these students opportunities to learn differently about that. What advice would you have for all these students about as they're learning about their own minds and how they work, how to
Well,
better
I'm a big
understand
believer
it?
in exposing students to all kinds of different things. So if they're an extreme visual thinker or an extreme math thinker, they can gravitate towards things that they'd be good at, get into careers they'd be good at. I visited Stanford University about a week ago, gave my different minds talk. Big, huge engineering university. There's one lady in charge of facilities maintenance, and she can walk into the equipment room in the basement of a building and listen and go, that pump's starting to get a bad bearing. I'm going to order one now. It has a 2-month delivery time. And the mathematician said, well, how do you do it? She says she just listens. And then she can visualize the bearing wearing out inside the pump shaft. I totally understand that. I think that's kind of interesting.
That's
The
really
world's greatest
interesting.
engineering university has a little lady that listens to
She hears it.
equipment rooms.
That's so remarkable.
But that's a different kind of thinking. No engineering degree,
Yep.
but she can just listen.
She can listen and she
goes
can
around
see it.
campus and she then spends a bit of time listening to equipment rooms in the basements of buildings or on the roof of top buildings. And tell you, well, we better order a part for that. It's going to go out soon.
Not dissimilar from what you do with
It's
animals.
saying, yeah, she's just doing audit, but I can understand what she's doing because there's auditory things like that that I also, then you see, because you've taken that pump apart in shop, and then you can see how that bearing's wearing. It's not a smooth sound. It's more rather than
Yep.
yeah. So
You can hear it.
I can hear it. Yeah.
Well, I'm grateful for the conversation. It feels like both as educators and as parents, there's a lot to be learned from this idea of different kinds
Well,
of
I'm
minds.
concerned that we got some very smart minds that get labeled autistic or whatever. They're not learning work skills, and if you get, they just get screened out.
Yeah.
And the problem you have with autism is at one end of the spectrum you got Einstein, other end of the spectrum you've got somebody who requires 24/7 supervision, and it all has the same name. But I'm seeing too many kids labeled autism. They're not learning work skills. I was cleaning, taking care of a horse barn when I was 15. I was learning work skills. They're not learning any work skills. That's another thing. I recommend some of these kids when they're in college, they need to be doing some summer jobs relevant to their career. Get out and do some work skills.
Seems like good advice.
And the thing is, I tell business people, we need these minds.
Yep.
Oh yeah, you better believe it. I checked the author lists on papers on quantum mechanics, papers on room temperature superconductors, and I do know what they're for. In your MRI machine, you have to have supercooled helium, liquid helium, to make the MRI work. If you had room temperature superconductors, you could get rid of the liquid helium.
And a lot of expense and
And
a lot of
of
space.
expense, and helium's getting scarce. You could get rid of that. Just think what room temperature superconductors would do for the MRI machine. Okay, that's a use I totally understand, and most people could understand why that research is important. Yes, we'll probably be importing the next room temperature MRI machine from China if we don't develop our math kids.
Well, that seems like a strong admonition for the rest of us.
I remember telling the CEO of a travel company that I went and visited, the first step is you have to realize different thinking exists.
First, understand that it exists.
You have to know it exists.
And then two, start to learn how to identify it.
Well, in the Army, one thing I'd like to look at is what the whole Army aptitude tests. Because this one lady that I talked to, they go, "Oh, you're fixing planes." Sort of like, that's what you're going to do. We need people to fix planes, and you're going to be good at it.
And they identified that
Well, it was
quickly.
identified through aptitude testing.
Yeah.
Mechanical aptitude testing.
Well, I'm grateful for the book you wrote. It opened my eyes in a variety of ways, and it was a real help to me, both as
Well,
a
that's why I
parent
did
and
the
an
book.
educator.
And then the math kids, they're going to eat the algebra up. They need to be taking calculus and all that other stuff. But then you take our vet techs. Don't screen out your best vet tech because they failed algebra. I have never passed an algebra class.
No.
And I majored in psychology to dodge math classes. I think I've had a pretty good career. I think Wayne Schmeckley, with a corporate jet, finishing up a beef plant in North Platte, Nebraska right now, was helped by a single welding class,
He's
having a
doing
really
okay.
good career.
He's doing
And
okay.
he just went into the Colorado Ag Hall of Fame, and I helped nominate him.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, he's got a really good career.
Yeah. There's
We
a
don't
lot
wanna
of
screen him out
encouragement.
either.
There's a lot of encouragement for kids that there's different pathways, right?
But then I was talking to a tech school I visited up in Wisconsin, and they were saying, well, they got to do all their basics first, which is an algebra class. I said, please don't make a maintenance mechanic for factory go through an entire algebra class. You will screen out your best maintenance mechanic. And I worked with plenty of them. I spent 25 years heavy construction, 70s, 80s, and 90s, out on big jobs. I designed the front end of every Cargill beef plant in North America. Steel and concrete work. I developed a piece of equipment called the center track restrainer system. The first one was built by a guy who was definitely autistic. Yeah, next time you eat a steak, it probably was held in my piece of equipment.
This has
I
been
look at
such
these
a
things
fun.
and I'm going, when I started the projects that were shown in the HBO movie, those were done in the 70s, I wanted to prove I wasn't stupid. A lot of people thought I was stupid because I couldn't do algebra. But now I'm finding other people that can't do algebra.
They're not stupid.
No, it's a different kind of thinking. And we need the different minds. We need the different minds. Because what happens with the tech companies is they start out, with just the mathematicians running it. They have to go do what they call hiring a suit or hiring a grown-up. And that's basically going to be a verbal thinker to run the company. They all have to do that. Because the math thinker and the visual thinker, they're not good with the business part of it.
Yeah.
So they have to hire a suit or a grown-up to run the company.
I've been really grateful to get to chat with you here. This is really fun to get to hear you describe these challenges. I enjoyed the heck out of your book.
Well, great.
It was very enlightening for me.